Educators Save the World, a podcast where artists and their mentors talk about the impact of arts education on both their lives. Today, I'm popping in for a Tony's recap with remarkable producer, lifelong theater kid, St. Louis hype woman, and Erica Halverson bestie, the great Nicole Hudson. I got the idea for this because I was watching the Tonys on Sunday night, and so many folks who have been guests on our show, who we hope will be guests on our show, appeared during the Tonys. And I started thinking in doing that, like, what is it about theater kids that make them so inclined to not only think about the role of mentorship in their work, but to talk about it, to speak on it, to make it an active part of everything we do? And so I had this idea. Luckily, Nicole is like the queen of yes and, because I was like, do you want to record something where we talk about theater kids and the Tonys and mentorship? And she was like, absolutely yes, let's do it. So Nicole Hudson, welcome to Arts Educators Save the World.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me so I could say yes. I think part of what you were just talking about is about how we're obsessed with each other, like theater kids generally. So the fact that there's so many on stage, the fact that they talk about each other, the fact that I said yes, it's because we're all obsessed with each other.
Well, and I would love for you to start, actually. You have this concept called theater kid consciousness. And
Yes.
you have kind of, listeners of our show will know, I love a nerdy academic break-in into the middle of a conversation. It's kind of that's my whole job typically when we do these shows. And you also love a nerdy academic break-in. You love a 50-cent word. You love a way to capture an experience. So talk about theater kid consciousness and talk about how that shows up in general, but specifically how it showed up for you when you were watching the Tonys on Sunday.
Yeah, it's funny. I said to somebody recently that my brain works in frameworks. And I think I've recently come to accept that that's how it works. I'm like, here's another framework. Here's another framework. And when Wicked came out a year and a half ago, whenever the first one came out, I suddenly noticed all of these people breaking out into song and wanting to go over the lyrics and wanting to listen to things over and over again. I'm like, that's a theater kid thing. Why are my husband, who's not a theater kid, he was the one quoting from the show. He was the one correcting my lyrics. I'm like, what is this about this moment where there's this sleeper cell unlocked in all these people? And it felt like, as a theater kid who had practiced at that having so many other people suddenly there with me, it was like, I'm supposed to do something with this. Like, what am I supposed to do with this theater kid consciousness that suddenly everybody has? And so I've been thinking about it over the last year. And to me, there's certain elements, and this is a working framework, so maybe this will spark some conversation that tweaks some of this, but the idea that theater kids are going to show up to do the thing. It's like rehearsal. We're going to do this. Yes, I'm going to show up. We have a posture toward joy and making things, and that the thing that we're making is additive to the world. So even if we're doing a play that's really depressing or about some horrible topic, like, there's joy and additive to the conversation that we're bringing with the making of that thing. It all revolves around practice. Like, we want to show up for rehearsal. We're going to do what needs to be done. We're going to make the thing. And in that, if you need a prop that is like a severed head that also is wearing a wig, but also has one leg, like, somebody's going to figure out how to make that prop. And I think the thing that resonates so much for me to all of the other ways in which I have come to work and be with people in my life is that theater kids will put their everything into making a thing, and then they'll leave it in time. So it's not like we're going to put our everything into putting on a production of South Pacific and we're going to perform it for the rest of our lives. We're going to put everything into it. We're going to do it for a weekend or 2 weekends, and then we're going to walk away from it. And then at the same time, we never actually really leave anything because the byproducts, the inside jokes, the friendships sort of stick around forever. So yeah.
I mean, so many of the things you said, first of all, resonate with my book, How the Arts Can Save Education, right? And the role of joy, the role of making, the role of practice in what good teaching and learning environments should look like is totally present in the way we talk about what a good teaching and learning environment looks like. But the joy piece, I noticed out of the gate in the Tonys. I mean, the opening number, for folks that didn't watch it, I suggest watching it on YouTube, was an epic rewrite of the song Lady Marmalade to include all of the shows, all of the stars, the host, Pink, in a sort of enormous joy bomb that included, I would guess, hundreds of performers. I mean, almost every ensemble member of every musical, even some folks in straight plays, got a chance to sing their bit. And you know, I was mentioning to you off mic that I noticed that mentorship was built in, like, from the opening number, right? Neil Patrick Harris, who has hosted the Tonys many times before, was part of Pink's quote unquote indoctrination into hosting the show. And Ariana DeBose, also a longtime Tony host, popped in, and they built in this idea of bringing one another along, like, into the opening number itself, which I was like, oh, mentorship is just built in here.
There was one speech later on in the show where they talked about leaving one family and joining another. And it's this, just like, once you're in, you're kind of in, and you want to share it. You want to invite other people in and sort of build that experience together. I actually, when I rewatched the opening, what occurred to me that it was kind of like the internet live on stage, just in that, like, what goes viral are things that are collaborative, they're remixes, and there's creativity. It's like unexpected ideas put up next to each other, said really fast. And this idea of, like, the feat of human ability and the sense of, like, are they going to get through it? What's going to come next? Very much felt like the thing that happens when there's a viral video and everybody's passing it around and it's hilarious, et cetera, et cetera.
And the liveness of it, right? There's something about the liveness of theater that gives it a different character. And it doesn't mean that television or film or performance art doesn't have its own characteristics that make it ripe for, emergence, collaborative emergence. But there's something about the live performance that is, it's in the performance itself, like you're saying, the, like, what's going to happen, and that everybody knows it, right? Everybody is like, what is going to happen, including the performers. And it's just joyful to watch it unfold. And as much as awards shows can be problematic, the fact that that's what's being honored, and I think, I don't remember who said it, but I wrote down at some point, somebody, and I think it was a television or movie actor who said something like, theater people are the hardest working people in show business. And the idea that the live performance of it all means that you're working harder than anybody else is honored in this awards show, which I think is a rare feature of a celebration such as this.
Yeah. I've always said that musical theater specifically is the most perfect art form, and that people could fight me about it, because there's not another art form where you have so many different disciplines, so many different types of logistics, skills that have to work together for 2.5 to 3 hours in order for the thing to happen. And so just the stakes of that, which of course then naturally pulls in mentorship, because you can teach a discipline. You can teach somebody how to sing, you can teach somebody how to write, you can teach somebody how to move a set piece across the stage. but what it takes to do that in collaboration and coordination with hundreds of other people 8 times a week is something you have to experience in order to learn, which necessitates the idea of mentorship and passing along experience and knowledge.
And to brag on my own show for a minute, I clocked at least 4 Arts Educators Save the World guests somehow implicated in the show. One indirectly, the great Cody Renard Richard, who is probably Broadway's finest production stage manager. I say that often on the show. He was the production stage manager for Ragtime and also for Cats the Jellicle Ball. And he's the person who makes everything that you said happen. I've also had Shayna Taub on the show, and though she was a performer in the Tonys, she was on the show talking about being a female writer on Broadway. Bobby Lopez, first guest on our show, also a writer, also a collaborative art maker, right? He was on stage with Matt Stone and Trey Parker, the 3 of whom are responsible for Book of Mormon. And then one of the reasons that I wanted to get this out quickly is our next guests on our next episode includes Broadway's current Mungo Jerry and Cats the Jellicle Ball, Jonathan Burke, who was on stage, who actually that's in one of it. That's when I started shouting about yes, mentorship. This is the thing, right? That guy sat, on this same platform with me a few weeks ago with his childhood bestie, the great Adina Varner of the Old Globe Theater, and their middle school and beyond teacher from Baltimore, who is still teaching young people, talking about how Baltimore theater raised the 3 of them together. And so, watching Jonathan get a chance to shine, on the biggest stage in the United States really made me celebrate exactly what you said about sort of how the power of mentorship surfaces for all of us all of the time.
Yeah, it's like a continuous thread of, if the idea of creating live theater and the opportunity for people to sit in a dark space and contemplate the same experience, if that is the larger sort of idea, this thread of who are the storytellers, who are making the stories happen, how are they doing it, how are we continuously coming up with new ones and evolving it and connecting it with more people. It's like a giant relay race of this discipline or this gift that we have to be able to bring this stuff to life.
And I want to shift gears a little bit, but extend that to say that the Tony Awards, which includes the American Theater Wing, which I don't know much about as an organization, and maybe you can speak a little to who they are and what they do. But another thing that impressed me was that there were multiple moments during the broadcast of the show, which, by the way, I read was viewed by something like 5 million people, which is pretty amazing, had explicit moments where they talked about the importance of arts education and theater education as part of the show. There was a 1-minute video that played from the American Theater Wing that talked about why arts education is crucial for the next generation. They said, young people need to be nurtured, taught, fun, and then arts education needs to be funded and protected. And that video, coupled with then later in the show, an explicit 30-second call out of the Tony Award for Excellence in Theater Education. Freddie Hendricks was sitting in the audience on the aisle in the 4th row, and he was introduced, he didn't give a speech, but still a 30-second time in a national broadcast to recognize a person from Ellenwood, Georgia, who went through a nomination process and was acknowledged as the Theater Educator of the Year. I don't know if you have thoughts about that, but I was so struck when I was paying attention to it that, like, here's this huge national and maybe international platform for awarding greatness in the theater, and they chose two explicit moments to talk about the power of and the value of arts education.
It's wild to me as I, in my careers, swing between like commercial business, sort of institutional work, and community engagement, feedback, very sort of human-centered work, and they can't happen without each other. And the way that that pendulum swings sometimes about where we're focusing or where we're putting our lens or anchoring our priorities. And I think what's true about the American Theater Wing is it is a representation of the fact that without those educators, without the bold work, without new people having access to both consuming but also making and growing in the creative arts, that we lose our ability to have what we get on Broadway, to have what we get, in the commercial world. The Theater Wing, maybe surprisingly or not, was founded by some suffragists. So the idea that that stories and storytelling and human empathy are part of how we create the systems to hold more of us. The fact that that dot is connected at the center of the Theater Wing makes me think that that anchoring is acknowledged by the Antoinette Perry Awards and the industry writ large, of having the power of these stories have to be told by people who are cultivated and held and have opportunity to grow as people and to grow as storytellers.
That is, I had no, like I said, I know very little about the American Theater Wing as an organization, and to understand better how much at the core of what they understand, quote unquote, Broadway is, it is a platform for storytelling. Really, for me, again, in a potentially problematic business orientation, to at least, as you said, allow the pendulum to continue to swing back and forth. Maybe there's hope for how we think about commercial storytelling and its role in continuing to maintain an ecology of the importance of storytelling, both for our collective human flourishing, but also specifically for what young people imagine is possible in their education and kind of beyond.
And in the world. And I mean, in all of my work over the last decade plus in regional, structural policy issues, the ability for people to imagine something different is critical to our ability to create the structures and pathways for those things to happen, the conditions necessary for them to happen. And so many times, even people who have dedicated their entire life to a cause, when you ask them, what is your wildest dream of what it looks like because you've done all the things and you've been successful, it's hard for people to articulate that. It's hard for them to imagine it. So the ability for people to imagine, to articulate what that vision is, and to work alongside possibly perfect strangers to collaborate to make it happen is critical to something different than what we are experiencing in the world to be the majority of what happens for people.
I want to get to the regionalness because that is what shapes your work and your success. And also, I want to speak a little on how I think the American Theater Wing and the Tonys is also trying to highlight that. But before we do that, I want to talk about one other feature of the awards show that struck me in this explicit attention to mentorship and arts education, which is the speeches of some of the winners. And when I watched the show the first time, I noticed it, and then I went back and I clocked kind of 3 explicit ways that winners spoke to the crucialness of arts education and mentorship in their lives. And I wanted to kind of talk those through with you a little bit. The first one was Laurie Metcalf's speech, who won the Best Supporting Actor in a Play for Death of a Salesman. And, for folks who know, Laurie Metcalf is one of the great American actors of this part of the 21st century.
Also, fun fact, she's from Edwardsville, Illinois, which is where I grew up. Yeah.
And she helped found the Steppenwolf Theater because she went to Illinois State University alongside a group of college friends who she called out in the very first part of her speech. She called out her group of college friends, which includes John Malkovich and Gary Sinise, among others, as the people who made her career possible. They all went to college together. Then they all went on to start the Steppenwolf Theater together. And most of them have had storied careers in the theater as well as, on television and in the movies. But the idea that you dance with the ones who brung you is a very theater kid idea. And we do it clearly. Case in point. And also, for me, the ways in which this show has gotten made has been on the backs of those relationships. The great Kate Baldwin has been really essential in helping me do this work. Dan Lipton, who is wrote the theme song and has also been a guest on the show and part of it. But I was really struck. Laurie Metcalf started with that like, hey, I'm a theater kid and so are these all the other theater kids, and that made it possible. Which was amazing. So that was one speech. A second speech that I clocked was Joshua Henry's speech, which was a much more direct pointing to mentorship. He dedicated the award to his first voice teacher, who was in the audience, which means he said to, I don't remember, I didn't write down the name, but who said, she is in the audience. Okay, I just have to say, because we're kind of doing a live recording, there is a window washer coming down the window right now, just to my right. And so if you hear some banging, what you're hearing is somebody suspended 90 feet in the air using suction cups to make sure he doesn't fall to his death.
Live theater.
And I'm sure you can hear it. Oh, he's literally in my face as we speak. So, Joshua Henry identifying an individual person. Oh, and he noted she gave him free voice lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of said something to the effect of, at a time when I didn't even know what I was capable of myself. And we've had many people on this show who have brought their version of whatever that first voice teacher is. And the fact that at 40 something years old, this is a person who probably worked with him when he was 10, 11, 12 years old, who is in the audience watching him accept this award, makes my soft, nerdy heart warm. And then I'd love for you to talk about the speech that you clocked as we were kind of prepping for this.
Yeah, Ali Lewis, when he talked about, first of all, he used his platform to talk about what he believed in. He was basically like, I have a lot of people to thank. Go look at my social media where I've been doing that. I have some things to say. He was like clear about the opportunity. But the thing he said that really struck me was that he said something about theater often being described as escapism, but it is a place where we can worship the power of true collective human presence and recalibrate our addiction to dehumanization. And I was like, you said it all. Done. Drop the mic. Yeah.
Well, and we were sort of talking about how there's 3 levels of mentorship at play in those 3 speeches, all of which we've touched on in this show, right? There's kind of peer mentorship in the way that Laurie Metcalf talked about it. There's traditional mentorship in the way that Joshua Henry talked about it. And then there's this kind of mentorship through the air among community and over time in a way that Allie Lewis talked about it. And we've had, sorry.
Like, is he on your head?
I mean, he's basically on my head. Sounds like the giant in like some,
Into
fairy tale, like fee, fi, fo, fum giant.
Yeah.
That, we haven't really had mentors. Well, that's not true. I will say my friend Kurt Squire, who brought with him probably the best living harmonica player, who is Willie Nelson's harmonica player. And Kurt I didn't realize this, Kurt had never met him before he came on the show. And so our discussion, their discussion was less about thank you for doing X and more about how do you share, how is it that you're so effective at sharing your expertise with the world and with those of us who aspire to be the kind of musician that you are. And so all of these different ways that we can define and understand mentorship, it's so fascinating to me that if you look closely, you see all of these ways of talking about it among this group of theater nerds.
And you've made me think of a fourth one, which is the co-directors of Jellicle Ball. And they said something at the end. First of all, So Theater Kid demonstrated the point of being co-directors by having a tag. What they said, it was tag team performance was their category. It was so good. But they said something about like this if you're a 12-year-old boy who's like watching this with the volume low in your room by yourself, like come find your home at the Jellicle Ball. So this idea that even an industry, a visibility, I think this goes back to representation, can mentor somebody's imagination that they too can participate. There is a place for them. It's such a wonderful, beautiful idea.
And at a time when a lot of folks feel afraid of even identifying the community to which they want to, pledge allegiance, the fact that all of this was done with joy, was incredible to me. And this sort of gets a little bit off the point, but I love that there's a bunch of like kind of foolish musicals and plays right now on Broadway. Like I love that. I actually read a take, like a hot, quote unquote hot take about like how Broadway is running away from our problems. And I was like, that person missed the point. Like joy as resistance is the point, right? Yeah. It is the point that you can have serious resistance within experiencing like profound joy. And that joy can be silly. Like Cats is, I don't think I'm going to say anything total. It's a stupid musical. It's stupid. But it's poems about cats. So like the point is not to like, have your intellectual life changed.
Right.
But the point is to understand how this set of dumbass poems was reimagined for radical inclusivity and joy. Like, what a treat.
The opening speech of when they say like don't unwrap candy wrappers and put away your phones, etc. And at Jellicle Ball they say, and be prepared to get your whole life. And the audience just loses their mind before it's even started. And just being in a room with that many people being that joyous is like crack. It's like, give me more of that, yes, please, all the time. And can I pass it out to, pass crack out to everybody, but like, can I pass
Please don't do that.
Jolly Ranchers. It's like, can I give Jolly Ranchers to everybody? Because this is stuff everybody needs a taste of.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I experienced. I've seen Oh Mary twice. Once with Cola Scola and once with Maya Rudolph. And I experienced that same thing in that live space as well. Again, it's dumb, but it's supposed to be dumb. And the dumbness is part of what takes the sting out of some of the most painful ways in which we try to coexist together.
I mean, spoiler alert with, Regency Girls, but like a musical about autonomy and the ability to live your life that you want to live. That's a hilarious, silly journey of like ridiculousness, is something I never thought I would understand, but I'm very excited for audiences to see, because it's a lot of that same sort of medicine.
Well, let's make the transition. I'll talk a little bit about the final kind of thing I noticed in the Tonys, which is their nod to the importance of regional theater, and other professional spaces in the US and also abroad. There was a little bit of a nod to the UK, but mostly regional US spaces where exciting new work, professional work, outstanding work is being made. I'll just put in a little plug. It was not on air, but my great state of Wisconsin won its first regional Tony Award. The American Players Theater won the regional Tony Award this year, which is an award that the Tonys gives out every year. But also, there were nods to regional theater throughout the awards, the acknowledgement that, like, yes, Broadway is sort of the whatever apex of commercial theater, but that it doesn't just come from nowhere. It comes from these local spaces where new works, experimental works, revivals are mounted as ways to make more expansive what theater can be and can look like. And you are, I would say, I don't have to be humble, one of the leading voices in regional theater right now in the US. And so,
Wow.
I would love for you to talk a little about some of the initiatives that you're a part of, that you've helped start, things that you can imagine. Could talk about Regency Girls, talk about the stuff happening in St. Louis. So,
Yeah.
Nicole, please.
Well, there's so many voices in regional theater that I can think of that are more prominent than I am. And it's interesting to even think about myself that way. The Muni in St. Louis won the regional Tony last year. So Mike Isaacson and the team over at the Muni, who put on 7, I'm going to get it wrong, 7 shows in like 14 weeks. It's like, and I think about it as a highway for mentorship. So there's the St. Louis rep, there's the Black rep, there's St. Louis Shakespeare, there's Opera Theater St. Louis. Kate Baldwin is actually here right now in a production at Opera Theater St. Louis. We got to watch the Tonys together on my couch. But all of these theaters you could think of them as highways for mentorship, because people get to come here and be with students. Like Kate was talking about the opera students that she got to work with and light the piazza, and have the time and reps and practice with people at all different phases of their career in a way that doesn't have the high pressure of being a commercial show. And also thinking about the audiences, I was really struck. First of all, the Muni seats like 11,000 people.
Holy
8
moly.
nights a week. Like, that's a lot of audience who will sit outside in 90-degree heat to watch a musical. When I was at Kate's opening at the Opera Theater, like, Light the Piazza is not a pedestrian piece. It's not like something that you're gonna not a lot of people are familiar with it. So to see the audience like there in it really struck to me that like we've got some pretty sophisticated audiences here in St. Louis that are enthusiastic and interested. I talked a little bit about my work in policy, and for about 10 to 15 years, I was doing a lot of very heavy work post the killing of Mike Brown, worked for the mayor's office a little bit, lots of stuff around race and economic mobility, and just topics and policies that we in our country have a long history of things that we have chosen and structured that result in what we have now. And at some point, it occurred to me that the way that I could see something different happening in St. Louis, particularly knowing so much about how it's structured and where our ruts are, and where we get stuck, is through the lens of a musical. So I think the first time it occurred to me, it was like, okay, so there's another report that came out saying the same thing the last 5 reports said, and there's a lot of fanfare, and we do articles, we do press release, and I was like, it's like there's a musical number called Reports. And maybe you have people at a table in 1960 and they're singing about the report they're doing and they're like, we've got the report. And then you move to another part of the stage and you've got another group of people in the 80s and they're doing their report and singing about their report. And ultimately there's like a line of people with all of their reports and maybe there's a kick line, which I don't actually believe in. And like that was the way that I could start to get excited and make sense of, be able to absorb some of the repetitive head beating up against the walls ways that we behave, but also start to imagine some solutions that we might break into if we were able to break out of our patterns. And I started to think about what it would look like to have more people who are from St. Louis, who've had the experience of living here and navigating here, but also creating something fantastical out of nothing alongside people they maybe never met before. So we recently, just this summer, are doing a pilot to partner with some high school kids to design a program where in the fall, a group of high school kids from all over the region will come together and write an original musical based on their experiences. And then in the spring, the idea is that we would mount that original musical. So it might be a whole musical, it might be pastiche with numbers, we don't know, but we're going to let the students help us design it and put it together and see what we get.
And who is sponsoring that?
Yeah, so we have the Muni is helping us, the Kransberg Arts Foundation, and also the St. Louis Education Fund. So even in the pulling together of partners, they were like, that sounds interesting. Here's the piece I could do. That sounds interesting. Here's the piece I could do. So it's maybe even in that a little bit of a theater kid thing of me saying, hey, this is this idea that, would you help? Would you help? Would you help? And everybody's like, yes, Mickey and Judy, we're going to put on this show.
Yes. Well, and talk about, I think adjacent to that is Hudson Man. So talk a little about your production company and how you and Dwayne have forged these pathways, kind of crossing. I mean, I would say you are one of the most successful boundary crossers that I know. And boundary crosser in sort of commercial and nonprofit theater, but also I should say, because this is a audio recording and not a video, you are a Black woman. And, your capacity for boundary crossing, ethnically, racially, how that shows itself in your professional life, in your policy life, in your artistic life. I think all of that for me is why when Nicole Hudson says, we're going to make a thing, everybody's like, cool, here's what I can do, because I know Nicole will cross all of these boundaries and make that happen. So talk a little about Hudson Man.
Sure. First I'll say it's so fascinating to hear yourself reflected back from other people. So thank you for that. So Hudson Man, I'm Nicole Hudson. Dwayne Mann is the other half. We met in line for $20 tickets to rent in the late 90s. Theater kids. Met each other working in a general manager office, Les Mis Phantom Saigon. We were both in sort of the back office there. And over the years, we have always talked about being Black in commercial theater and the layers of stories that we don't necessarily see ourselves in, or the stories that we do see ourselves in are not necessarily the stories that match our experience. We actually had a 2-person show we did called Least Likely to Sing Gospel, where we explored that back in the late 90s. So we came back together about 4 years ago and he'd gotten his PhD at Northwestern, Go Cats. And we started talking about how all the things we've been talking about, how theater is a way for people to digest and have a shared experience that maybe takes the complexity of the world and puts it in a lens that they can consider something different, maybe walk out of the theater a little better equipped to help making the world a better place. So we started talking about creating a space for artists and art and stories that helped people make sense of the socio-political landscape. And at the same time we were having that conversation, Mike Isaacson from the Muni was one of the lead producers of the Wiz revival and said, hey, would you maybe be interested in working on this? And so I said, what if we did our comeback to the theater world through this really commercial thing instead of our super nerdy, like heady thing? And so we did. And so we have come together. We call it our creative home. So we both have different sorts of projects that we do and bring it back to Hudson Man for all of that boundary crossing. And since we started working on The Wiz and have started this journey, it's just like all the right projects and partners have popped up, and we're really excited. I think the thing I'm most excited about right now is Betsy Brown, which is a book by Netsuzuki Shonge, a colleague of ours who we met through The Wiz, has the rights to produce it. And so they really are interested in exploring what it takes place in St. Louis post Brown v. Board, and they're really interested in exploring what it means to come develop it in St. Louis. So that conversation is happening, and that's a really exciting, because it brings together all my stuff into all the boundaries come back into one thing, which is my favorite.
That's so great. Do you want to say a little more about Regency Girls? Because I know you kind of mentioned it and folks may not know what that is.
Sure. Regency Girls is a new musical comedy written by Jen Crittenden and Gabby Allen, who we might know from writing shows like Scrubs and Veep, being on those shows. And then Curtis Moore is the composer. Amanda Green is the lyricist. And it is a romp of a girl journey through 1810 London, where they go on a journey to help to decide their own fate. One of the lead characters finds out that she's pregnant, she's unmarried, and they have to figure out what to do. So she grabs her best girlfriends and they go on a carriage trip, and hilarity ensues. We are on our way to Broadway, just waiting to get that call for theater. Had a great out of town in San Diego. A friend of mine likes to joke that more people believe the world is flat than don't like Regency Girls. Because when we did the survey, I guess there was a study recently that 10% of the people still believe the world is flat, but only 6% of people didn't like or love Regency Girls. So we're like, sounds good. Sounds great. So really excited.
And is that a Hudson Man joint?
That is a joint. I am partnered with Robin Goodman, who was one of the lead producers of Avenue Q, and Josh Fiedler, who is her partner in Aged in Woods Productions. They actually both just won their play Giant. This is revived on Broadway. John Lithgow won the Tony. So they were at the Tonys, very, very fabulous.
John Lithgow and your assistant, who I've communicated with often, if you're listening, I would still love to have you on the show. John Lithgow is a lifelong advocate of arts education. And I'm so delighted that he is experiencing this kind of revival so late in his career. And the good folks at Giant, I think, have been a huge part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are my partners on Regency Girls. So the way that we do it with our creative home is like Dwayne is working on a couple projects. I'm working on a couple projects. We ultimately do them under Hudson Man. But we do a little bit of different stuff in different spaces.
Well, Nicole, this has been such a pure joy bomb for me.
Same.
We talk like this, frankly, listeners, Nicole and I talk like this all the time. It's just that no one's listening. So now we have had a conversation that thousands of people will listen to. And we hope that you'll join us in the conversation. Nicole, I'm going to preview how we're going to close this episode out. I play a game called 3 Things, where I will ask a question and you will give me 3 responses. And they're improvised, so we're live on the air. So, however you come up with it is how you come up with it. I would like you to give me the names of 3 musicals that you would like to write, real or imagined.
St. Louis, the musical, is one of them.
1.
Ooh, this is hard. Theater Kid Consciousness, the musical.
2.
And Group Chat, the musical.
3 things. And listeners, I'm going to give you 3 ways that you can stay involved and be involved with our show. You can like, subscribe, and comment anywhere you get your podcasts. That is the single most important way that people who are not you can find out about our show. And you say
1.
Yes. You can visit our website, artseducatorspodcast.com, where we often have additional information about our guests, about things they're doing, links to all of the great projects that they talk about.
2.
And if you like old-fashioned communication, we have an email, artseducatorspodcast@gmail.com. We would happily take your suggestions for guests, your questions, your comments, anything that occurs to you that has inspired you around arts and mentorship.
3. That's 3 things.
Yay! Onward together, everyone.
Arts Educators Save the World is hosted by Erica Rosenfeld Halverson and produced and co-hosted by me, Alec Lev. Our executive producer is Doug Matica, and our audio producer is Justin Asher. Special thanks to our collaborators, the brilliant and talented Kate Baldwin, and our great friends at Story Pirate Studios, Lee Overtree, Benjamin Salka, and Amy Fiore. Original music is by Dan Lipton, and our artwork is by Lyra Evans. Check out our website designed by Cole Locasio at www.artseducatorspodcast.com. We're on Instagram at Arts Educators Podcast, and you can write to us with your questions and comments at contact@artseducatorspodcast.com. You can also find us at a place called YouTube. And wherever you're listening, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps the show. We're proud to be sponsored in part by the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the Gibb Faculty Fellowship. Arts Educators Save the World was created by Erica Rosenfeld Halverson and Alec Lev.